Hello, today I will be going through nesting ESXi 5.5 using auto deploy on Workstation 10. So I guess the first question that comes up is what is nesting, and also why would you ever want to do it? Nesting is when you take an ESXi host and you run it inside a virtual machine, and you can do that from within ESXi itself. You can do it using Workstation 10, which is what we're going to use today. You could potentially use it, do it using another virtualization platform. I've attempted it on Hyper-V with very limited success. I don't really recommend that. My personal experience, I find it works great on Workstation 10, and that's what I'm going to be demonstrating today. So now getting to why you would ever want to do this. There are scenarios, particularly in a lab environment, where you perhaps only have a single host, or maybe you've got your entire lab on your laptop and you just can't emulate 4 hosts in a cluster. This is where you may want to consider nesting, because it'll allow you to create as many hosts as you have resources for, and at that point you can do testing with your cluster settings, HA, DRS, things that you require multiple hosts for. In particular, you can test your auto deploy settings, because there are a lot of dependencies for auto deploy, and if you're setting that up for the first time and your goal is to deploy it physically to bare metal at some point in the future, you can use nesting to verify that all your back-end dependencies are in place already. Power CLI automation, you can get all kinds of different, you can test all kinds of different scripts when you want to test them against multiple hosts. Distributed vSwitches, host profile configurations, this is a major one that I'll be going through. And I'm also going to be hopefully using this method to provide a DR environment and then configure SRM at some point in the future. So, with no further ado, I'm going to move ahead with the install. So in previous videos, I've gone through deploying the prerequisites for auto deploy. I've also done the actual auto deploy setup and the rules and so on. So I'm going to start with a clean environment. I've got Workstation 10 here with nothing. In my particular situation, I'm going to deploy Windows 2012 R2 server. I'm going to install vCenter. I'm going to then link it to my primary site. But for for people following along, if they don't want to do all that, you can just install your single vCenter. We're going to go with 5.5U1. Again, when you're using auto deploy, there are all these prerequisites that are available. I've already created a video on this topic, so if you need a refresher, if you need to go over that, take a look at the other video for getting this set up. And then you need auto deploy installed and configured. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare the environment. And once that's done, I'll come back and we can start preparing our nested hosts. Okay, so I'm back. I'm just going to bring you up to speed on what I've done while I had the video recording paused. So we've gone through this already, which is the reasons why we're doing this. So just mark that off. We have discussed the prerequisites. And as I said before, there is a previous video that you can use if you'd like to follow along and do this in your own lab. So in the background, I have installed a new server, 2012 R2. I've got a new vCenter installed. It's 5.5 update 1. I've done it in linked mode because I'm planning on doing an SRM module later on. That's not necessary for you guys. You can just, in your own personal labs, you can just have a single vCenter. That's fine. So on this second vCenter, I've configured auto deploy. I've configured my I've used Power CLI to create my rules. The rules are here. There's a complete list of everything I've done. I'll probably post this up along with the video. The key ones are I have created a new image And I've created a new boot rule, and this is initial boot. This is the catch-all boot rule, which is going to catch all hosts which are attempting to boot into the environment. And so now I'm ready to create my first nested host. So I'm just going to pause for a second. So I'm back and we're ready to proceed with the actual nesting of the host. Now Workstation 10 I think is just awesome for this purpose, and you will see why pretty quickly. So I'm going to just create a typical virtual machine. I'm going to choose to install the operating system later. You'll notice if you select VMware ESX, it knows what you're trying to do, and it will actually enable the VT technology for you. And the rest of this stuff we'll do ourselves. What we're going to do is just install just the basic components. You don't even need a hard disk when you're nesting ESXi hosts, which is nice. You just need memory, CPU, a very, very basic virtual machine. We're then going to boot the first host, and we can add several at a later time. Once we've booted the first host into the vCenter, we can then do all the configuration, add it to the correct cluster, and then update our deployment rules, and then add subsequent nested hosts which will automatically join the correct cluster and have all the correct settings applied thanks to the host profile. So I'm going to go ahead and do this now. I'm going to call it Nest 1. Just going to drop it in my Workstation folder. I've prepared a folder for it already. And there's no option to not create a disk, so I'm going to create one and then I'll come back and I will remove it. And you pretty much have to create a disk, but we can just strip that out later on. So it's created. I'm going to edit the virtual machine settings. There's a couple things that I'm going to modify. I'm going to set the network adapter to bridged. The rest is fine. I'm going to remove the disk because we don't need it. We can always add storage later on. In your lab, if you're going to do anything advanced with ESX, you really should have some kind of shared storage. I may go through that at a later lab. I have ESXi storage here that I use. Now another thing we can do is we can actually pre-stage these hosts, and I'll show you how to do that right now. As you can see, you can actually assign a MAC address to it in advance. So if you have come in here like I have into DHCP and created a reservation for it already, you can just come grab that IP address and then plug that in over here. So I'm just going to see if I can do this both at the same time. I don't think it'll let me just copy and paste it. Oh, actually it might. I think I just have to add some dashes. We should be good. Oh, maybe not. Okay. Oh, I see. Semicolons. So I'm going to go ahead and power this on and we'll see what happens. Just got a little warning message. I think that's about the CD-ROM not being connected, but we don't need that. Okay, so in the background, what's happening right now, we have we manually assigned that MAC address to the virtual machine when we pre-staged it. So to confirm that it's working properly, the reservation that we had created was for IP address 200, which it got, which is correct. So what should happen in the background, if our TFTP rules are set up properly, is this machine is going to boot, it's going to hit the DHCP server, be redirected to our TFTP server, There are additional rules you need to configure there if you're gonna, especially if you're gonna run multiple vCenters. They're gonna need your clients are gonna need to know which one to go to. So you need to ensure that you've set up the forwarding there correctly. And at that point, it hands off and starts downloading the image directly into memory. Because as you recall, I removed the hard disk out of this machine, so all it has is CPU and memory. It's loading the OS into memory. So it does take probably about 5 to 7 minutes to boot up. So while that's going on, I'm just going to pause it. And in the background, so I did boot this one previously just to test, make sure it's working. I did cheat a little bit, and it is going to work eventually. So I'm just going to remove this from vCenter. In the background, what we'll see once it does boot successfully is it's going to appear here in this vCenter that I've recently built and configured just for this demonstration. So I'm going to give it a few minutes to boot up, and we'll check the progress in a few minutes. Okay, so as promised, as we can see in the background here, it's beginning to add a standalone host. If we go into Workstation, we should see the progress. So it's already booted up. Now another thing you'll notice I've done here, I have named the host differently than I named the virtual machine name. This is just to avoid confusion. If you, well, and not only that, I mean, you should never have two hosts with the exact same name, but it gets very difficult to differentiate when you see Nest1 here and then you come into your vCenter and you see Nest1 here. If you go to shut one down, are you shutting down the virtual machine or are you shutting down the host? Like, this is just kind of a logical separation for me. I find it's very valuable, is to name them differently. So this is Nest1. This is NH1, and where it's pulling that name is actually from DNS. So if you come into here, this is another thing you can and probably should do when you're pre-staging. So you create the IP reservations, and you can, if you wanted to create 4 hosts, and we'll probably be doing this in a later video, you call them Nest1, Nest2, Nest3, create an IP reservation, the MAC addresses. You would then come into DNS and you'd create an A record for each one, NH1, NH2, NH3, NH4. And then as those boot into your vCenter, you'd see them appear here, and you can begin to start configuring them. So I think that that's just about everything we're going to configure in this video. There are a few more things to do. There's actually tons more that we should do when it comes to configuring the actual host settings. There's lots to do here. There's configuring the shared storage, syslog, there's all sorts of things that should be configured. The NTP settings, and to avoid doing those manually each time you do this, you're going to want to do that using host profiles, especially if you're using auto deploy. Those kind of go hand in hand. So the topic is big enough to probably warrant an entire video on the topic. So I'm going to leave it here for now, and we'll take it up in the next video. Hope you enjoyed watching.